Our Democrat of the day is running for Attorney General. He's actually the DFL endorsed candidate for Attorney General, and his endorsement set off a interesting series of events here in the state of Minnesota. Matt Pelikan is kind enough to join us today to talk about his campaign. Mr. Pelikan, thank you very much for the time.
Hey guys, happy to be here.
My pleasure to have you on the air, and I'm actually really glad because you were pretty much out of. I've never seen someone come out of the blue as much as you did and win the DFL endorsement. Congratulations on that. Explain to everyone who exactly is Matt Pelikan.
Yeah, well, thank you. It was a great and humbling moment for me. I'm a lifelong Minnesotan. I grew up in Northfield with Paul Wellstone as my hometown hero and got involved in politics at a young age. I started organizing on issues of income inequality and economic justice when I was a teenager in Northfield through some friends of the Wellstones who were my backyard neighbors, Mike and Nancy Casper. Went to my first precinct caucus when I was 13 years old and was precinct chair down in Northfield before I could vote. I went all the way across the Cannon River to St. Olaf College for undergrad. I led the college Democrats there and organized against the Iraq War. I worked for Paul when he was a U.S. Senator, and then I worked for Mark Dayton when he was U.S. Senator. I went on to law school at the University of Minnesota, where I was editor-in-chief of the Minnesota Law Review, and I clerked on the Minnesota Supreme Court for two justices, first for Paul Anderson and then for David Lillehog. I was in private practice as a civil litigator at Robbins, Kaplan, Miller, and Cerisi for a number of years until 2016 when I quit my job and put all my stuff in storage to move to Ohio, and I helped run the voter protection operation for the presidential campaign there, where we fought voter suppression and expanded access to the franchise. I'm back in private practice in Minneapolis and been involved in Minnesota law and politics for over 20 years, fighting to make a difference.
You clearly have the resume, I mean, for this position. What prompted you? What made you say all of a sudden, you know what, I'm going to run for the Attorney General's position?
Yeah, I'd say two big things. One, it was coming out of the election of Donald Trump, and I thought, what does this mean for progressive politics generally? What does it mean for me personally? And as depressing and as dispiriting as some of the stuff we've seen the last couple of years can be, I realized the only way forward for progressives was for people to get more involved, not less. And for me, that meant running for office. And so I looked and I said, attorneys general are going to play a critical role on the front lines, not only of holding Donald Trump accountable and stopping his excesses, but of continuing the important work of getting an economy that is actually delivering results for people of all kinds and in every place, and the important work of civil rights and equal rights. And I thought Minnesota needed a stronger and more progressive attorney general. We needed to revitalize that office to build on what is a proud legacy of what has sometimes been the best public law office in the whole country. And I didn't see anyone else out there willing to stand up and talk about it and really press those issues forward. And so I thought, this is a place where I can stand up. I can speak confidently and strongly on these issues and help to push this vital office for our economy and civil rights and equality and opportunity in the state in a more progressive direction. And so I jumped in. I was committed from the beginning, regardless of Attorney General Swanson's intentions. And I really wanted to see us do the important twofold work of the urgent need to get an economy that is actually working for people while we continue to stand up and protect equality and civil rights for all peoples in Minnesota.
I want to give you credit because you can't. I mean, my gosh. I mean, the Pelikan, inflatable Pelicans, in the realm of marketing, that was one of the more effective tools I've seen because pretty much everyone that went down to Rochester for the convention had a picture of the Pelican. And by the way, if you have an extra one, I'd love to have one. They're very cool. But that wasn't just it. It wasn't just a catchy little inflatable Pelican that was the case. Explain for a lot of people, because once again, it's not like you're talking to people who are shy on politics. We actually know a lot, especially on the Democratic side. And your victory really was out of the blue. Talk about the strategy you took at the convention for the endorsement and how you got that implemented.
Yeah, I mean, I know we surprised a lot of people. I've been joking that, I think maybe my mom thought I could get the endorsement, but probably not a lot of other folks. But I will disagree a little bit, say it's out of the blue. I am a believer in the caucus and endorsement process. This year was my 12th precinct caucus. Again, I've been going since before I could vote. And there are too many barriers and hurdles to that process. But I think one of the benefits is that it is a grassroots process beginning really a year and a half ago and going through the precinct caucuses on a cold winter night where Minnesotans in every part of the state, meet with their neighbors to talk about politics and talk about how to move the progressive agenda forward. And it's a process that allows a candidate like me who has a message, who has something important to say, to put in the work and connect with Minnesotans in Minneapolis and in Thief River Falls and Duluth and Northfield, of course. And so for me, I went to over 100 meetings this spring. I made thousands of phone calls. I logged over 10,000 miles driving, and I went to almost every county in Minnesota to personally present my vision of a strong and progressive attorney general's office. And so it may be below the radar, but there was a tremendous amount of work. There was a tremendous amount of enthusiasm at the local grassroots level in this campaign. And so we went into the convention. Our numbers, frankly, were so good, I didn't want to believe them, because we just were picking up a tremendous amount of support from people who shared that excitement for an attorney general who wasn't afraid to stand up and say what, frankly, almost every lawyer in the state knew and a lot of progressives knew, which is that we need a strong and progressive attorney general. And so we went in there. I felt confident that we would hold it to multiple ballots. I knew that I had an opportunity to persuade people who hadn't been paying attention or were undecided, because, there's a lot going on in Minnesota politics this year. So I got up, I tried to lay out in my speech as clearly and forcefully as possible why people should pay attention, why we needed a change. And, we got there. It was a great moment. It was exciting. It was surreal as a young dorky political nerd, since before I could drive or vote, to be the player in one of the biggest political upsets in Minnesota history. And it was an incredibly humbling moment.
By the way, you're absolutely correct. Out of the blue is not a fair statement. It is very much under the radar. But what you did is Wellstonian. Other Democrats have proven this theory as well. Is that if you get out there and meet with people, and this is something I think that you can teach every candidate that's running in these primaries, that if you get out there and meet, Aaron Murphy's out there meeting. I know Tim Walz and Peggy Flanagan are out there meeting. Lori Swanson and Rick Nolan are out there heading meeting as they run for the governor's race. If you put in the time and you go to the meetings and you get out there and you talk to the people, good things happen and good results happen. I think that endorsement probably is a clear example of that.
It was hard earned, and the credit goes to the folks throughout Minnesota who joined this campaign early on or on the floor of the convention, and just believed in a politics of hope, over fear, and optimism, that we could really make a difference in this office this year.
Before we get to the primary, let me talk a little bit about some of the issues. And I know, as the Attorney General, it's a kind of a different position, in the sense being is that you don't quite know what's going to come across your table when you become the Attorney General. And so, hence, to talk about what you're going to do is there are some things that will come to your attention, some things you might have in your mind. What are some of the things right now that, if you became Attorney General, you would want to direct your focus on immediately?
Yeah, so the top three issues I've been highlighting in this campaign are guns, drugs, and antitrust. And I'll take those in reverse order. I think the concentration of too much economic and political power in too few hands is the greatest challenge facing our society. And besides collective bargaining, antitrust is the best tool we have to shift that balance of power back into the hands of working people in the middle class. And Minnesota used to lead the nation in state level antitrust enforcement. We had other state attorneys general send people here. We had law schools like Harvard and Stanford send law students, because we were pushing the boundaries of holding special interests accountable and breaking up the modern day trusts. And it's simply a difference of priorities, but that office has been reduced, I hear, to 2 full-time lawyers and maybe a half-time lawyer. And so number one for me is launching a task force to make Minnesota the national leader once again in holding special interests accountable through antitrust enforcement. It touches almost every sector of our economy, almost every community in Minnesota, and it's something that is available right now under existing law, a tool that a progressive attorney general can use to help people throughout Minnesota. So that's number one. And number two for me is holding the pharmaceutical industry accountable for its role in out of control prescription drug pricing and the opioid epidemic. I'd say there's no reason that drugs that are innovated in America and made in America should be cheaper right across the border in Canada. And I think, again, under existing law right now in Minnesota, the Attorney General has some important tools available to go after that industry, force them to the bargaining table, negotiate for lower drug prices on behalf of state purchasers, and really get to the bottom of the opioid epidemic. Number three is guns. And this is, as an ally, I think we have to stem the tide of gun violence in our communities. It is a crisis. It is one of the biggest reasons that I knew we had to push this office in a different direction. The incumbent has an A+ from the NRA and has repeatedly joined forces with the NRA, joined forces with Ted Cruz at the U.S. Supreme Court on behalf of the NRA. And we need an attorney general who is going to use this platform and this office to support the grassroots movement we're seeing here in Minnesota and throughout the country that's demanding some sanity in our gun safety laws. So those are the top three issues. There are a host of other ones, and I'm happy to talk about that more, but those are the ones I highlight in the campaign.
I'm not going to miss the point here that what you've just described are three major things which Democrats were trying to get specifically in the Minnesota House. Republicans to address things which are wildly popular as far as issues going on here in Minnesota. I mean, the vast majority of people want to hold pharmaceutical companies accountable, want to more, a safer community from guns everywhere. And yet they failed. I mean, is that part of your motivation as well, seeing the fact that the Minnesota Republican Party, especially the Minnesota House Republicans, failed to do what 80-90% of the state wants?
Yeah, I mean, they've failed to do so many things that not only are popular, but are right. And we have to get a state government overall that is ready to actually step up and make a positive difference in people's lives. And as I said in my convention speech, I think one of the things that defines us as Democrats and as progressives is that we believe politics can make a positive difference in people's lives. We don't have to stand alone. We can stand together to address some of these issues of getting an economy that's actually working for people, holding special interests accountable, and stemming the stranglehold that they have on everyday people in this country, and stemming the tide of gun violence in our communities. These are, as you indicate, these are popular things. They have broad-based support. I think the Republicans' ongoing reluctance to engage on these issues, which is not surprising, but still very disappointing, is going to be one of the things that fuels progressive candidates at every level of the ballot here in Minnesota and throughout the country this year.
The win by you at the endorsement convention, started a lot. Lori Swanson left. She withdrew from the attorney general's race and entered the governor's race, which has turned that race somewhat on its ear a little bit as far as heading for the primary. But then the attorney general's race itself got very crowded very quickly. Tom Foley, Deborah Hillstrom, Mike Rothman, and of course, 5th District Congressman, U.S. Congressman Keith Ellison, all entering in to challenge you in the primary. Your thoughts on the crowded field all of a sudden?
Welcome aboard. Welcome to the fight. I was under no illusion that Attorney General Swanson was going to abide by the endorsement. We always expected to have a primary. The primary looks different than we thought, as you say, and some of the people getting in are good people. I have tremendous respect for Congressman Ellison. I like him, and it's not necessarily the campaign I would have picked, but it's the one that's here. And progressive leadership means taking on the fights that need fighting, that require fearlessness and tenacity, even when no one is watching. And that's who I've been throughout my life. It's who Minnesotans we're seeing really want as an attorney general. And I look forward to bringing the same determination and integrity that I brought to bear throughout my political and professional life to the attorney general's office. It's going to be a good conversation through the summer and into the fall.
If I can ask you kind of a campaigning question, how do you change your campaign a little bit here? Because obviously, once again, an endorsement convention is DFLers, and a lot of them are, the party faithful, that core base. But now a primary, you're looking at Democrats across the state. How have you changed your game plan, your strategy as you're heading towards August?
Well, we're cognizant that the audience changes, especially in scale. I don't think the message changes. I think, it was important for me in this campaign, for instance, to give the same stump speech, the same answers in every part of Minnesota that I campaigned in. And I think that people really respond to a vision of a strong, progressive leader, someone who's willing to take on fights, never back down, even when it might not be the easiest path. And that's what we need to really make a difference in our society, to get an economy that is sharing the fruits and the benefits with everyone who's putting in so much work and labor, and giving people an opportunity to get ahead, and standing up for equal rights. I mean, Minnesotans are incredibly fair-minded. They're incredibly just people in a state. I love this state. I love our values and our communities. And so, again, the scale changes, but I don't think the conversation changes. And I think that the message that worked for us in schools and community centers through the caucus process down to the halls of Rochester is going to resonate just as well in the primary, and frankly, just as well in the general election.
I think that's not going to work on your behalf because I agree with you wholeheartedly. People don't want someone that's changing their story to match the audience. They want someone that's committed to their beliefs. And if you stay by those base core values, along with that endorsement, that should help you greatly when it comes down to the primary.
Well, thank you. I mean, I agree. And, I've worked on a lot of campaigns. I've seen a lot of politicians firsthand. And, one thing that was important for me watching this was it's a fickle business. You can have the best laid plans, you can run a great campaign, and you might not win. And for me, on a personal level, it was very important to get up there and just say what I thought and engage at a sincere level with people. It makes it more fun. And I think over the long term, you have a better shot at showing that people that you're going to be a leader with conviction, with integrity, which is something people are really hungry for. And then even if things don't work out, you have yourself and you can look at yourself in the mirror, and it just makes the whole process work more smoothly. So it was very important for me to just say what I think. That's who I've always been. It's who I'll be as Attorney General. And I think it's a good political strategy too, but more so it's just the right thing to do.
MattPelikan.com. That's Matt, M-A-T-T, Pelikan, Pelikan.com is the website. If you'd like more information about Matt's campaign, as well as also if you'd like to donate or volunteer, I'm sure he would appreciate any efforts on that level. MattPelikan.com. And once again, Pelikan is with a K. Matt, I appreciate the time today. Thank you very much for the interview, and all my best as you head for the primary.
Well, I appreciate it. Yes, anyone who wants to volunteer, chip in some money. We don't necessarily have the party support, the establishment coming in, but we do have the message. We have the grassroots, and we can get there to have a strong and progressive Attorney General. So thanks for having me on today, and thanks for everyone who's helped out so far. I look forward to seeing everyone on the campaign trail this summer.
Absolutely. Matt Pelikan, kind enough to join us. Democrat of the Day. We'll spotlight him. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate the time. It's the Matt McNeil Show. Take a break right now. Come on back on AM 950.